Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you have never seen me before, my name is Rilo. Welcome back. So excited to have you all here. Today, get ready with me as I tell you a story about the time I quit my job at Chick-Fil-A. So going right in with my Alpha Power Grip because, girl, I feel like this story is pretty juicy because it's a whole thing. So, little context. So, I don't know if you guys can see, but I have just like a tiny little scar. Just a little scar right there. It's like in a C shape. From Chick-Fil-A. And at this job, so I started because I needed a part-time job in college. So, my college was about an hour and a half drive from my previous place of employment. I was a lifeguard, and I still kept that job because I worked there on weekends, but you know, it wasn't bringing in the dough that I needed. So I was like, what better way than to get a part-time job? So that's where Chick-fil-A comes in. I worked there for 3.5 months about, and it was nice. I liked the people. I made really great relationships, and I'm still like Facebook friends with a lot of them. Not necessarily like good friends with a lot of them because of the distance. I ended up moving farther away from my college town. So at this job, I was a line cook. So I wasn't customer facing because if you know me, I don't necessarily like people. Like I'm not, I get very awkward in like people situations and I don't know. So at the time I was like, line cook pays better. I don't have to talk to customers. Like, whoop-de-doo, right? So in the back, honestly at the time of my freaking life, I met the best people and I really made the most of having 2 jobs while I was a full-time student. So, you know, I made the most of it. I did what I could. I was trying to get money because college student living was not the best. Well, at least in my experience, it wasn't the best. So, it was a great way to get away from my dorm at the time and make money. So, you know, I was getting that dough, getting that bag, and for some reason, there was one shift manager, like a cook manager, that just did not like me. I don't remember her name, honestly. Like I can't for the life of me figure it out. This was a couple of years ago, like 4 to 5 years ago at this point. So she just had something against me. I don't know what the heck it was, or like, I don't know. But point being, I didn't take it to heart. I knew, or I learned pretty early on from being a lifeguard and like a head lifeguard, that I can't take things personally, because honestly people will yell at you if you're having a bad day because you're in public service. So nothing that I could do to really change your attitude about me, like whatever, this is that and the other. So I came in, I did my job and everything. She had to critique me on everything. Like at 3 months I was no longer training, but I think it was like a 2-month or a month and a half process. Like there was like a star system that I can't recall to this day, if I'm being completely honest. So I just, you know, not freshly out of training, but still like learning my way around things. So obviously, like I take critiques or criticism, constructive criticism really well. Like, hey, you're doing this wrong. Maybe if you do it this way, thank you so much for telling me, because I would have never done that on my own. You know, like just simple things. I'm learning that I can't forget to do my brows before foundation. I need to remember to do them because there's like this buildup of like gel. So, fun stuff. Okay. So she just hated something about me. I don't know what it was. I never really did anything. I pride myself on a great work ethic. I was always on time, if not early. I think it was a requirement you had to be there like 15 minutes early anyways. So I would always be there right after my classes. So there was I would walk from my class to my dorm, get my uniform on, and go straight to work. So every time I'd go in, she'd have just like a stank attitude. And it wasn't always that I had her. I think there was like a rotation of like 3 managers at night because I was closing. There was no way in this God's green earth that I was gonna wake up so early, which I ended up, after I quit, I ended up just going to the lifeguarding job at like 3 o'clock in the morning to be there at like 4:45 because it was an hour-and-a-half drive. But whole different story on my car and its mileage, okay? But so this manager just hated me. I don't know, I don't like to use the H word, but she hated me. I have no idea why. So this story pertains to the scar that I showed you at the beginning, because that's the reason I quit. So the day before, I had the flu. Okay, maybe it was like a couple days before, but the last shift before me getting this scar, I had the flu. I was sick and I worked with food at the time. So obviously they tell you it is a huge risk factor to work with food while you are sick. So I called my manager because I skipped my classes for the day. I literally like chugged a half a bottle of NyQuil so I could sleep during the day and be fine for work, because you gotta go to work, you gotta make money, because if you're not working, you're not making money. So that was my mentality, like you have to work in order to get money, and I wasn't missing work. So I just did not feel good after sleeping all day, after missing all my classes and everything. I just still wasn't having it. So I sucked it up and I called and I was like, hey, I am so extremely sorry, but I cannot come in. This is the Say Sun Melt bronzer. So whatever, I'm like, I'll give it a couple days. Like, it was like I had to end up calling off for a couple days because I just wasn't having it. I had like the flu or something, but I was throwing up. And so on the phone when I called him, of course this manager answered, and she was like, no, I don't believe that you're sick, so I need you to come in, and until you're literally throwing up, you can't go home. And I was like, okay, fine, whatever, because being the naive college freshman me, I was like, you know what, that makes sense. Like, how do they know I'm not making it up? Like, whatever. So I went in. 20 minutes of being there, I threw up. What'd you expect? You know, like you can't tell me to come in after I tell you I'm sick and then be like, I don't believe you, and then I literally throw up and you're surprised. So whatever. So I go home. I cleared it with the manager on duty, like who oversaw everything. So I cleared it with the manager, and she was like, oh my god, I'm so sorry. Like, if I would have known, you wouldn't have come in. No worries, feel better. Like, let me know if you need tomorrow off too. And I'm like, okay, great. So I chug the other half of my NyQuil bottle that night, and I go to sleep. I knock the frick out, okay? And I wake up the next morning, I'm not any better. I call in, I'm like, okay, that manager does not answer the phone, and the like big manager, I loved her, she was great. She was like, oh my gosh, no worries, we'll get coverage, don't you worry about it, feel better, like, have a great day, kind of thing. Like, I called him in the morning, like I knew I wasn't gonna feel good because I was still throwing up that morning. And if y'all know me, I don't throw up, like, unless I'm really sick. So, or a long night of drinking, but it's fine, I can't hold my liquor, it's fine. So, continuing this, so I don't know what ensued or whatever, but I had some of my coworkers texting me. They're like, hey, are you okay? Like, your manager is telling us that you quit. And I'm like, I didn't quit. Like, no, that's not what happened. And so I was like, whatever. Like, honestly, at this point, I was like, well, I mean, it's not a big deal if, like, she does say I quit and I just never go back. But I would never do that because I like the people there too much to just up and leave. So next shift back, let's say it was like a Wednesday that I wasn't feeling good, I worked my other job Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, and I was going back to work Monday. So I had my classes and then Monday work at Chick-Fil-A, and so I went back to work on Monday. And I was like, hey, I'm so sorry, whatever. And I knew that I wasn't gonna have that manager that day. So, I was super excited, I was cheerful, I was having, the time of my life, knowing that this manager wasn't gonna be there. Well, lo and behold, she was there. Manager ended up calling out. So whatever. So I was supposed to be on like hot foods, which is like chicken tenders and chicken nuggets. So I was on this side of like the two-sided whatever. Chicken nuggets and chicken tenders during, like, that was like my scheduled thing to do. So the manager comes over to me, she's like, actually, you're gonna do prep. And basically what that means is salads, cleaning. In my opinion, it was the worst rotation and I hated prep. But whatever, my manager told me that's what I'm supposed to do. Cool, great, whatever. She ended up letting the other girl that was assigned to prep go home. And I was like, strange, but okay, like, who's gonna be on like nuggets and tenders? She's like, I'm gonna do it. Well, that's how I assume it would go if I was like confrontational, but I'm not. But she ended up doing it, and so I was on prep. I was doing dishes, and closer to the end of the night, I honestly do not remember what time it was. I just remember it was close to the time that urgent care was closing, and I don't know what time that is anymore because, again, this happened 4 or 5 years ago. So I move on to chicken dishes, and if anyone's worked in like a restaurant kind of scene, chicken dishes are the most serious dish to take into consideration. So of course, precaution, sanitary, whatever. So these dishes are in boiling hot water with soap and sanitation. You have like, we had 3, so we had them sit in sanitation, and then we had to scrub them off, and then we had them sit in sanitation again, but it's like a clean sanitation, and we took them out and we like hosed them down basically, and then you put them on a pile next to this big industrial like dishwasher, and the chicken dishes don't go in the dishwasher for cross-contamination reasons. So I was doing these chicken dishes, and cool, great, whatever. The manager comes over, she's like, it's not hot enough. And I'm like, it's hot enough to the point where I can't put my hand in the water. It is hot. And she's like, well, whatever, suck it up, because sanitation and we can get audited or whatever, and safety. I'm like, okay, fine. So she turns the water on boiling hot, and I'm like, okay, so it's hurting to put my hands in the water, but I'm sucking it up because, again, I'm almost done with my shift or pretty close to closing or something. And I'm like, I was just hanging on to something that night, honestly. So I am literally putting the last chicken dish, so it's like a giant rectangle, and I go put it down, and like I had mentioned, that dishwasher was there. It was metal. It was totally, completely metal. And there was a frame that protruded just a little bit, and so my hands were pruny. Like, I had been doing chicken dishes for an hour in boiling hot water. So just to give you like the severity of like how soft my hands were, so I go to put this dish down, and I swear to God I cut my finger off. Okay, in that very moment I swore to God, okay, I was using the Lord's name in vain, that I cut my finger off, because blood went everywhere, all over my clean chicken dishes. I was livid. I was livid. So, well, because my chicken dishes were dirty, and I knew I was gonna have to clean them up. So I balled up my hand in, I don't even know what it was, like remembering back, I balled up my hand in something, some kind of cloth or paper towels or something. I balled it up, and I walked to my manager, and at this point, like, I didn't feel anything. I knew I cut my finger off in that moment. That's the only facts that I knew at the time. So I go to my manager, my lovely, lovely, sweet manager, and I'm like, hey, I think I need to go to the hospital. And she's like, really? You're gonna leave early again? And it's not just like me holding like towels like, oh, can we go home? No, like I have blood going down my hand. It's bleeding through the wrap. Like I'm clearly injured. And so my lovely manager is like, go talk to the general manager, the little sweetheart that I love so much. She was in the office and I was like, knock, knock, knock. And in restaurants, like they're big metal doors, so it's like clunk, 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 clunk. You have to like knock on or whatever, right? So she's like, 1 second. And I was like, okay, no worries, take your time, take your time. So I am just like, you know, take your time, it's fine. I'm Jay chilling with you know, my bloody finger, bloody hand or whatever. And after a couple minutes, I think it was like 1 or 2 minutes, like nothing crazy, but in my head, I'm like, I'm dying. I'm literally about to bleed out on this floor right now. But it's fine, right? So, she opens the door and she immediately sees my hand. She's like, oh my God. And you know, like, you see blood and you're not expecting it. You're like, oh my God, like, are you okay? And I'm like, I cut my finger after doing the chicken dishes and I haven't unwrapped it. I haven't looked at it. And I'm like stuttering because at this point I had a minute to sit in WTF happened, right? So I am shaking now. And so she's like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And she hands me a piece of paper and she says, go to urgent care, like go get this checked out. This is workers' comp. And I'm like, oh my God, okay, like I really don't need workers' comp. Like I have health insurance. Like, I don't know. Like I had never done workers' comp before. I got this palette from Five Below. So like I had never had workers' comp before. Like I'd never injured myself, or at least to the point like I got a bee sting one time. Come to find out I'm allergic to bees. Super great, super amazing. So I follow the address and I call a friend and I'm like, hey friend, no longer a friend at this point, and I'm like, can you please meet me at this hospital because I cut my finger off. Again, I still hadn't looked at it, and I drove myself to the urgent care. And the lady at the front desk, honestly, this is just like a perfect storm because my friend that I called for moral support, if you know me, it's the girl that had the name of a season. Okay? Leave it up to the imagination as to which season that is. It's fine. So I called her and I was like, hey, like, you're my only friend up in this college town that like you're my best friend at this point. Like I trust you with my life, whatever. So I'm at urgent care. The lady at the front desk that is helping me has an attitude because come to find out they close in 10 minutes. But I was told by the sweetheart angel baby of a lady that was my manager, she's like, you can't go to you can't go to the emergency room. You have to go to urgent care. I was like, okay. So it was imperative that I get to urgent care because in that moment, urgent care is in my head. Like I have to get to urgent care. I'm at urgent care. They close in 10 minutes and this friend shows up and she has a stank attitude. And I'm like, okay, great. The front desk receptionist lady has a stank attitude because they close in 10 minutes, which I understand, I get it, I'm sorry, but my finger's cut off. And then my friend has a stank attitude, but who knows why, because I'm confused at this point. Like we'd never had beef, or maybe it's something like stupid, which college was stupid to take anything that seriously, but whatever. So everyone has a stank attitude. And I tell this friend, I'm like, hey, they're probably gonna take me back in a little bit because I'd been waiting. We were waiting in the waiting room for the doctor to take me back. The receptionist lady, who was also the doctor, I guess. I don't know. But basically, so everyone had a stank attitude. Moral of the story. like I was surrounded by people who had bad attitudes that day, and you know, I was trying to keep my little chipper self in check, and you know, it could be worse. I have 9 fingers, but at least I have 9, right? I could only have 5, you know. That was my attitude with the whole situation. And I'm using the e.l.f. powder blush. And so I am just surrounded by people. So I was telling this friend that was with me, I was like, hey, you know, they're probably gonna take me back a little bit. Like, it's okay if you have like things to do. Like, you don't have to stay here with me. Da 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 da. Right, whatever. Like, I'm giving her an out, and she's like, okay, and just leaves. And I'm like, whatever. I gave her an out. Like, I have no right to be mad because I gave her that out. But whatever. She was a shitty friend, but that's okay. That's why she's a ex-friend. Next, taming frame for my brows. I'm just gonna do this off camera real quick. Back of the brows are fleek. Back of the brows are fleek. Okay, or done. Sharp, whatever. Whatever Manny says. Back of the brows are done. Back of the brows are done. Sleek. Okay, so back to the story. She leaves. Doesn't say anything, doesn't say bye, doesn't say hope you feel better, like good luck, nothing, whatever. I don't give a shit at this point. Like, my finger's cut off. And so I call my best friend, like my absolute best friend in the whole wide world, at the time. And we're gonna call her Emmy, because she's no longer a friend, unfortunately. So I call Emmy, and I'm like, girl, because I think she was in school for nursing. So, and she lived about 2 hours, an hour to an hour and a half away from me, because I was in college town. So in this college town, I moved away from all of my friends that I had prior to college. And I'm like, sure, whatever, great. But you know, I went every weekend down to see my friend Emmy, basically every weekend. So at the time, I called her and I, you know, start ranting about this season friend, and I was telling her, I'm like, yeah, she just left. And she's like, oh my God, like, if I had a car, I'd be up there. And I'm like, oh, it's okay. Like, I just need some moral support because, like, I don't know what my finger looks like. Like, I don't know. And so Emmy was, like, a really great support for me at the time. And, you know, she was there for me, and she was like, she's one of those people that's, like, likes the whole gruesome look or whatever. So we were on FaceTime, and she was like, FaceTime me, because the doctor took me back and had me put my hand in like a bucket of like yellow liquid. I was like, did you just pee in here, lady? Because I get you might have piss in your Wheaties, but don't put piss in my cut. So when she took off the wrapping, that's when I figured out I didn't cut my finger off. It's fine, like just like a really deep like tissue scar. I didn't hit bone. I didn't get any like important muscles from like my motor function or whatever. It was just a deep cut. I'm like, okay, fine. Best case scenario at this point, right? So I'm on FaceTime with Emmy, and the doctor tells me I will need 3 stitches, and I ask her, I was like, is there any way we could glue it? Because I just didn't want a scar. I really just didn't want a scar. I don't know why, because now I have like a lovely story to talk about, right? But whatever. She looks at me, she's like, are you fucking dumbass? Like, yeah, lady, I don't know how this works. Like, is that a no? Yeah, it was a no. I ended up having to get 3 stitches on my finger, which I guess that's a lot for your finger. People were telling me, oh my God, 3 stitches? And I was like, oh no. So I got 3 stitches in my finger, and it was super great. The doctor never told me to come back, so I assumed they were dissolvable. Come to find out they were not, and Side story, my dad's girlfriend at the time ended up taking them out for me at Thanksgiving dinner over a sink and a pair of kitchen scissors. She cut them. And happily ever after, my thing is all healed up. But back to the story. So I got my 3 stitches. My friend Emmy took like screenshots, or like, you know those like FaceTime video things, like live video kind of things? I don't know. She took like short videos like of it all happening, and I was like, ew, don't show me. No thanks. Like, I'm a little squirmish, but like not really. But it was my own hand, you know, getting sewn up. Also, it hurt like a bitch because the lady put in like, she like injected it. That hurt, first of all. Second of all, she didn't wait long enough to put in the stitches. Like, she didn't wait long enough to start the stitches for like the numbing agent to like work. So that heckin' hurt. I remember that very vividly. She was also pretty annoyed that I was on FaceTime while she was stitching up my hand, but YOLO. Do we still say that nowadays? Okay, so I'm just setting my concealer with the Meredith Duxbury 35 pan palette with shade Crumpet. This lady is annoyed. Cool, great, whatever, fantastic. I get my stitches. I'm great. She doesn't tell me like if I need to come back or whatever. And so I go back to my dorm and I call my little sweetie pie of a manager and I tell her, I'm like, hey, I ended up having to get 3 stitches. No, oh my God, I went back to work because I was like, no way are they gonna believe me that I got stitches in my finger. So I went back and they had it like wrapped with like a very like sheer bandage. Like, it wasn't really a band-aid, it was like a mesh sort of thing. I don't remember. So I went back to Chick-Fil-A and I went to my sweetheart of a manager and I was like, hey, so I went to this urgent care and they did this and you know whatever. She's like, oh my God, you didn't have to come back here, you could have just gone to your dorm. And I'm like, yeah, well, like I just want to tell you, like, I'm okay, like I appreciate you so much and da da da, you know, like thank you for letting me go. And she's like, don't ever thank me for you having to go to the hospital, you know, just a little sweetheart cherub baby and I just want to squish her face. I love her. She was in like her 30s, so whatever. And so the manager, my manager, the cook manager, the stanky attitude manager lady, never said anything to me. Didn't say anything to me. That was her last words to me, was, really? You have to leave early again? Bitch. Fucking twat waffle. I'm using Meredith's 9-pan palette just for like a cute little smoky look. Whatever. I'm like, I don't even care at this point. I don't like this lady. I'm just no longer interested in anything she has to say. Cool. So I'm like showing people like my little stitches. My sweet cherub baby manager was like, oh my God, I'm so glad you're okay, but that's really cool. Like, I've never had stitches in my life, or at least from what I remember. I mean, I've broken bones, but that's like a cast. Like, it's not super cool. I mean, I'm sure at the time it was pretty cool because I was like a baby and like 12 when I broke my bones. So I go back to the restaurant and I tell them all this, that, and the other. Whatever. A whole thing. I show them my 3 stitches and they're like, oh my God, you're gonna remember us forever. You're gonna have a scar. Yeah, I did. So I ended up leaving. I went back to my dorm that night and then I was telling my roommate about it, which she, my sweet little, also angel baby of a roommate, she was so introverted and, you know, just kind of lived vicariously through me telling her like how, like the parties I went to, whatever, basically like my life, you know. She's like, oh my God, no way. Like, she's very soft-spoken, like long brown hair, never bleached it, never like dyed it, you know, you know. So she was such a sweet angel cherub baby, and she was like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine, like no big deal." And she's like, "So when's your next shift?" And I'm like, I don't know, because at this point I'm like, I thought I cut my finger off, and the manager was like, "Really? You're going home again?" So yeah, I called the next day, and I quit. I called him over the phone. I was like, "Hey, you know, after this injury, I've just come to the conclusion that this isn't the job for me. Like, I really do apologize. It's such like short notice." That is the only time. That is only the second time I had ever called a company and quit, because I only do that to people who don't deserve it. But yeah, I called the next day and I quit, and they're like, "No, we totally understand." And then after that, I think like I just kept my lifeguarding job, and I just ended up waking up at like ass crack of dawn, because it was an hour and a half drive from my college town to where I was working. And I just woke up and I was like, "All right, I'm out." I ended up moving like to a different dorm for a second time. That's a whole nother story. But basically I was forced out of my first dorm, moved into the second dorm with my very sweet other roommate, and then I moved across campus to another dorm, and at that dorm my poor roommate, who I didn't really talk to me much, honestly. I feel like we just had very, very different personalities. She's and so I felt so bad. I would always wake her up at 2:30 in the morning, so then I could leave the house by 3, or my dorm by 3, and be in the general vicinity of my job by 4:30, 4:45, about the time that I needed to be there. And I can grab Starbucks. There was a Starbucks right across the street from my job. Came in clutch. So yeah, and that's the story of how I quit Chick-Fil-A. Honestly, I know some people who still work there. I'm still friends with them. I text them. But I think that tainted a lot of like my view on the food industry, which I can tell you a little bit more about all the jobs I've had, because my most recent like food industry experience was probably the best I've ever had. I worked at P.F. Chang's for like 2 months, and that's a whole different story on why I had to leave. I wasn't fired or anything, but honestly, I could tell you guys like a lot of stories about my job, actually. Let me know in the comments if you want to know about the first time I had called a job and just didn't ever come back, because I'd worked at Bath & Body Works for 3 days. 3 days, okay? Let me finish this look and I'll be right back. This is the final look. Lips, lip liner, ColourPop in the color BFF, hard candy lip gloss, Ardell Wispies on the eyes, and then MAC mascara. So moral of the story: don't stay somewhere that won't appreciate you or can replace you in a heartbeat, because they don't care if you cut your finger off, basically. So I hope you guys enjoyed this story time, because I know I did. Halfway through, I definitely felt my blood boiling from the whole situation and reliving it, but can't change the past. It's okay. Bygones are bygones, but I'll remember that manager. I'll remember her. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little story time while you got ready with me. I had so much fun. And then if you have any questions, my highlight is Meredith Duxbury's 9-pan in this gold shade. Love. So Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video with your friends, because if you liked it, I know your friends will like it. So don't forget to follow my socials, all Rilo_LaFay, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys. So I got this job. Oh my god. I'm a fucking mess. So I was doing chickens. Why don't you bitches tell me my eyebrows all fucked up?